I would like to give a quick introduction about you, if you allow me, Ashwini.
Sure, please.
Yeah, so let's have another big round of applause for Ashwini Lalit. She's another talented woman. She's a senior manager of product engineer and presiding officer for Posh IC at Nibblework. And she brings around 22 years of experience in the software testing domain. That is huge. And she would be delivering us a hands-on session on BDD from basic to Gen AI. So let's see what that hands-on session is having. Ashwini, it's over to you now. Let's
Yeah.
have the session started. I'll stop sharing and you can start sharing now.
Yeah. I hope my screen is visible to you all.
Yes. It's up.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Ashwini Lalit, and I head quality engineering at Nimblework, formerly Digite. So ATDD, BDD, or specification by example, all these terms are used interchangeably by industry stalwarts who have been working in this area. So today's today's workshop is culmination of all the experiences that I've gained reading through
Ashwini, can I request that can we hold for 3 minutes because our official time to start is 14:40,
Sure,
and
sure.
maybe others would also like to join in. Maybe we can
Sure.
inform, we will inform in track one also that your session is starting. Okay, so just hang on for a minute. Okay, few
Sure,
minutes.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. So I'll just message few pointers so that in case the lab setup is not done,
Yes.
so y'all will be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a lab setup is pretty simple. It's not a test automation or a Cucumber workshop. I'm going to focus more on the BDD practice as such, as to how it needs to be established, or what are certain challenges that we ourselves in our journey got over and then really got the crux of it. So I'll be discussing on that. It might be handy to have any of the BDD tools. So Cucumber is well accepted. So I've given the link to my Git repo. So if you can browse through it in case you're not able to set it up, you can just open it in browser. So I'll just ping those URL once in chat. So just be comfortable opening these URLs in the browser. That should suffice for the presentation. 1 second, where's chat? I'll just put this here. All right. Doesn't allow me to copy paste. That's surprising.
What do you want to copy paste, Ashwini?
I just wanted to put, remember, I just gave certain links that you can browse through in case the lab setup. Okay, there it goes. Yeah, I'm able to do it now.
Correct.
Yeah.
We have given rights, yeah. And we did share with everybody also in all the groups. Yeah. So just hang in for another 1 minute.
Sure,
I think official schedule for your session actually starts at 4 p.m.
Oh,
sorry, 14:20, so 14:40. I'm looking at a different segment. Yeah, 2:40 p.m. So we are still 1 minute away.
All right.
So I'm just doing it for the sake that if somebody is looking at the schedule and they come in, they will probably feel that we started before time. No train should leave before time. It can be late, but not before that time.
I hope we catch up on certain examples as we start doing hands-on. Probably that timing might get consumed towards the end. Where
no. So you have a buffer of a 15-minute tea break, Ashwini.
Okay.
So if there is any extra time that you need, you can consume that tea break time as well. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, it is 14:40, Ashwini. Sorry for holding you for the train to start. You can do it now. Green signal from our side.
All right. Great. Thanks for this forum, Aditya. Really privileged to be talking here with you all today. So, as I said, like ATDD, BDD, and specification by example, a number of industry stalwarts have spoken about that. Be it Dan North, 𝐁𝐫𝐶𝐻, John Ferguson Smart, Gaspar Nagy, and Seb Rose, all of them are guru in the area. And today's session is like culmination of best practices that they have outlined. And while setting up BDD practice at Nimble Work from scratch, we kind of went through trying to apply those best practices. So let's get started. Agenda for today will be getting over the basics of BDD, followed by discovery, formulation, automation. Those are three main pillars how BDD is practiced. And finally, we'll see how GenAI can be utilized so that we can come up with scenarios quickly. So BDD, you can consider this one to be a workshop, which is 4 workshops taken together: discovery, formulation, automation, and GenAI for BDD. So 10 to 12 minutes, 4 workshops. That's how we will take this workshop ahead. So in case when we do hands-on between these 4 workshops, if at all you fall behind, you can get in touch with me anytime. I'll be sharing the slide deck as well as the tools or prompts that we use. It's already there in the Git repo. All right. So BDD as a practice, it's built out of these 3 building blocks: discovery, formulation, and automation. And Dan North coined this term primarily with the objective to improve business communication. Discovery is about finding those examples that can describe my user story better so that I can get rid of ambiguities and understand the user story so that it can flow through the downstream. And if we don't deliberate this discovery right in the beginning, there's an accidental discovery that keeps happening when you start implementing the user story, and schedule and effort go for a toss. Discovery is followed by formulation. In formulation, you give business language to the examples that you discovered in the previous stage. And finally, there's automation, wherein you put code against the spec, code against the examples that you discovered or you wrote in the business language so that it can be validated against the live application. That's how it becomes living documentation. So let's understand this knowledge journey when it comes to user stories or starting with any development. It is kind of a knowledge exploration journey. So let's take one example. All of you are here for ATA GTR, right? There's something going on in your mind that you want to gather knowledge. There are so many topics. And when you look at all these topics, you must be wondering whether I'm really interested in all, whether I'll understand all the topics. Don't know. Let's go. Let's see what people are talking about, what's trending, right? So you take a role of an observer. That's what is the area or sphere of concern, right? You walk in as observer, keep an open mind, hear and absorb information as much as possible. Then slowly you walk into area of or sphere of influence. That is where you start thinking, can I read this topic in a manner and take home 1 or 2 pointers so that I can apply it to my work? That's where you start playing a role of an influencer. And then finally, there's a sphere of control where you start thinking, I know I just need to acquire this skill, or maybe I can sharpen the skill, go back and I can apply it to my team because it's all under my control. It's under my power, right? So from sphere of concern to influence to control, you are basically engaging progressively, turning the shared understanding into growth. And in similar fashion, when we look at our customer concerns, we try to do that. We read our customer concerns. The business people try to create an influence by taking home these pain points, converting them into application ideas, and then user stories emerge out of it. BDD helps you do that. Now, how do these user stories really emerge? GoKo explains it really well from his book, 50 Quick Ideas to Implement User Stories. All the user stories, they stem from the business goals. Business goals can be broken down into impact ideas, and then there's epic story hierarchy. Now, the beauty of organizing it in this manner is that when changing market conditions, you can shift from goal 1 to goal 2 and discard the entire hierarchy for which the stories may not have been implemented. That's where business agility come into play. And that's exactly the reason why you want to say that your business goal has to be stated in the language of problem areas that you're trying to solve and not the application feature set. It's better to say increasing revenue or ease of use for finding information as rather application that needs to be built. Building a mobile app is a bad business goal to have. It's better to say increase revenue by enabling additional ways in which customers can interact. Similarly, impacts can be fetching information faster is a better way to word the impact than saying add a search button on the application so that information can be found faster. And so are the user stories and so on. So for the sake of this tutorial, what we will do is we will be looking at the user stories once these are established and you take it up for downstream implementation, right? In the initial upstream part, when you're still calibrating goals to impact in the impact mapping process, you're setting up that sphere of influence. And then finally, when you start picking up stories and start implementing it, you get into the boundaries which are already established, and you have just that play area where you start implementing the user stories. So that's the background. Let's get started with discovery. So discovery is well achieved with the help of example mapping process. Now, example mapping helps you understand the user story better because it provides kind of a playground for having these structured discussions, right? Matt Wien actually invented this practice, and he called it as a very low-tech method and a very powerful method though that helps you converse over a user story. And you don't need much for it. All you need is color-coded cards and some marker pens. What you do is put down the story on the top on a yellow colored card, and then you want to find out the behavioral boundaries of those stories. That's what you call as rule, and put it down on the blue color card. And then finally, for each of the rule, what you start doing is try giving an example which is worded in with real data. And then everything that doesn't get answered is put as a question for later point of time. You can discuss it with the product owner. Straightforward. So let's meet Peter. Peter has been preparing for a requirements discussion, and he is product owner for a pizza store. He has with him Devin, who represents dev team, and Tessie, who is from the testing team. Now he calls the entire forum for doing this discussion over a user story, and then he reads it out. So the user story is about, we want to motivate our customers. So with the help of a great deal, first time orders get 20% off when the order total is above $30. The moment Peter says that, immediately Devin has an idea. Wow, it looks to be a very simple story. All I need to do is put one good formula that can deduct the discount. That's all. It's very simple. Tessie starts thinking, what will be the workflow on the UI? Looks like pretty straightforward. Peter pauses them and says, let's do one thing. Let's begin with a happy path first. All right. So when the user registers for the first time, if the order value is $60, then we'll offer a 20% discount and the order value will be $48. Now, do you want to add any exceptional flows to this or any alternative paths? This story can be further groomed. Devin and Tessie start thinking, and all their energies are now towards the behavioral aspect of the story rather than the implementation part. So they say, will you give the exact order value of $30 also the discount? Should it be given that? And what about the delivery charges? Will that be considered while giving discount? And so on, one by one, things start emerging, right? And that's exactly the beauty of this discussion. Each person represents a diverse perspective and helps in the conversation to evaluate the feasibility of that story, and whether it can be done within the scope of that sprint. What are wish list features versus must-have features, and how they can quickly deliver it. So when we put down these kind of examples and rules, hello? I hear some voice.
We'll have to mute everybody, and then probably you can probably unmute or mute. I think somebody has unmuted themselves, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right. So a rule can be very easily put with the help of blue card, where you put down the system behavior. And an example needs three aspects: context, action, outcome. So context is the
Ashwini,
prerequisite.
I'll just mute all, and then you can unmute yourself. Is that okay?
Okay, sure.
Yes, you can unmute now.
All right. Okay, so good characteristics of an example is it should have context, action, and outcome. Outcome, that is the sole purpose why this user story was formulated, right? The behavior and the purpose of the story was you want the system to behave in this manner. You want that additional functionality to happen. So that's basically captured in the outcome. Then there are trigger areas which cause the behavior. That's what you put in the action part. It can be something like an user input or a scheduler program, or it can be any third-party API which can cause this kind of a behavior. And then there is prerequisite, which is context, right? The prerequisite state when this user story will be applicable. So let's help Peter put down the very first rule and the first story, okay? So they said they want to give discount over anything order value above $30, right? So the correct way to put is user has no previous history of orders, then they can place, they will get a discount of 20%, right? So that's how you state the user story. So we'll do a small hands-on exercise over here. So I have given you 𝐁𝐫𝐸 draw URL, right? So on the 𝐁𝐫𝐸 draw URL, we all will collaborate to chalk out rest of the rules for this user story. Is that you guys are able to access the URL? I'll just bring up the screen. Just give me a moment. All right. Is the screen visible to you all?
Yes.
Okay. So you've understood what hands-on we need to do, right? We all are helping Peter to put down some more rules. So this is the user story. We've understood the background, right? Very simple. If the order value is above $60, we want to give a discount. What do you think should be the rules that we should be asking the product owner so that we can frame these rules and the examples? So the first one was straightforward, right? Anything above $30. So we gave one example over here. So I've put one of the example here, right? Now
Ashwini, are you there?
I am there.
Yes. Now we can hear you.
Okay. Alternatively, y'all can also message in the chat box in case you're not able to browse through the URL.
And which URL is this?
It's the 𝐁𝐫𝐸 draw URL. I'll just put it in the chat window again. Okay, it's taking it separate.
No, I have posted for you. Got it.
You've posted the URL. Okay.
Yes.
So all right. Just edit rule 2 and start putting there, or you can add additional blocks. Any volunteers? And does this rule is applicable for available products and services? It's a good question. Put a red color card. We want to ask the product owner that will you support this kind of discounting scheme in the in all the other interfaces as well, apart from the app? Great. That's a great question. That's what we want to ask. Ultimately, what ends up happening is it's during the implementation these questions emerge and they take our schedule for toss. Couldn't save backend database. Is there some error over here? Acha. Trying to edit, it's giving you error, is it? It should be straightforward. Let's say I'll also try adding one rule. I'll say here, I'll put this as overlapping discounts. Let's say overlapping discounts should not be given. That is the rule. And then we can put one more example to it. We'll say there's a seasonal discount of 5% when first time user places an order of $35, then only first time discount is applicable. So this is another example that we have put, right? So I'm primarily taking this further on this distributed tool, XLead Draw, but then there are multiple tools, Miro and others, which help us because now there's work from home or hybrid working area. You can still have a great example mapping discussion online so that the user stories are discussed in with all cross-functional participation. Now, what I'll do is, in the interest of time, we'll move further on this. One second. Why? Let's come back to this. All right. So there are few rules that I have already put. Let me just take that. All right. So some rules will be, what about first time order, how it is given? There's no previous history. And there can be rules like examples like first time canceled order is also possible, right? Then there are how you calculate the $30 threshold, whether multiple items together and you create a total value of the order, like 2 pizzas with $16 and so on. There can be a combo offer also, wherein it's not just pizza, but there are peripherals which are taken together. So these are kind of discussions you should have with the product owner so that you understand the user story well. So there are certain best practices which are applicable. Come prepared for the discussion. Then collaboration is key. During collaboration, it's essential that everybody gets a chance to talk. You need to respect because there's a cross-functional team that is participating. The next important piece is to ensure time management is done well. Now, this is very crucial because discussions of these sort can really bloat in time. We know that there are 2-3 hours of user story discussions, and the last part that you discuss in such lengthy discussions gets your least creativity. And a good idea that Seb Rose generally discusses in his literature is that, let's say it can be a 20-30 minute short discussion daily after your stand-ups, so that you start grooming the stories for N+1 sprint. Because in that fashion, what happens is you are already, the lead levels maybe participate in the grooming discussion. So they are already tune into the next sprint while your downstream teams actually progresses on the existing sprints. Then next one is about conflict resolution. Because it's a cross-functional team, there can be a chance wherein you have conflicting ideas, but that's the sheer purpose, to find out multiple perspectives. And what is essential here is to table unresolved points, and that you can discuss with the product owner at a later point of time with full focus. Then you can appoint a neutral facilitator. And finally, it's essential to stop the discussion which doesn't go anywhere. The whole objective is to ensure that the business perspective is correctly put and the entire team has bought into the idea of how we want to roll out this feature and take it ahead for customer. And last but not the least, to document the entire discussion so that it is available for downstream teams when they pick it up for implementation. So with that, we come to the end of the first part of BDD, that was discovery. Moving on to formulation. Now, formulation is a creative writing process. You want to word these examples that we found in the previous step in a business language format. It gives precision to the examples and it kind of establishes a business vocabulary for the next set of implementation that would begin. So let's begin from a very simple example. We have a pizza which is cut into, say, some parts, say 10 pieces. And now I want to put down the rule and the example for it. Because you eat 2 slices, 8 should be remaining. Pretty simple, right? We'll start from the simplest example and then we will go into real world scenarios. So now, in order to word it, those who are absolutely new to Gherkin language, this is how you put down your context, action, and outcome into given, when, then. It's not mandatory to use Gherkin, or Gherkin is not the only way of putting down scenarios. RSpec, JBehave, Behat, SpecFlow, there are multiple different tools wherein you can formulate your scenarios. The essential idea is you establish a common business language which is understandable to all the stakeholders. We can templatize the scenario. That scenario which is here, which is hard-coded, can be templatized so that you can provide multiple different perspectives to it. So here the idea is every row adds a new perspective. And then there should not be any duplicates. So many times I find team members, when they write scenarios, the data tables are absolutely crowded. Just too many things which are put, which defeats the purpose of speccing, defeats the purpose of putting down formulation. It becomes a test automation exercise and a testing exercise, then the spec exercise. Formulation or the entire BDD has been done prior to the actual development kicks off, right? You're trying to put down specifications in the manner, and that's how the application will be built. Now, this is another way of putting down scenario when you put this kind of an outline. So what we'll do is we'll quickly pen down our first scenario, just so that people who are new to BDD, I'll just take a moment to add our first feature file. My screen is visible, right?
Yes.
You can see the ID, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I'll add this feature file, eating pizza.feature, and we'll frame our first scenario here. Right? So feature eating pizzas, and we'll frame our first scenario. Okay, so Copilot is on, so it's picking up what kind of scenario I'm thinking. Eating or count of, we can word it in this manner, count of pizza slices when few are eaten. Let's say we'll put it in this manner. Okay, it guessed it from the scenario name itself. Given I ordered a pizza with 8 slices, when I eat 3 slices, then I should have 5 slices left. Pretty straightforward. That's how you pen down the scenario. Right? So coming back to this discussion, you all can try in the feature file. If the Copilot is unable, it's trying to guess from the scenario name. But even in absence of that, it's pretty straightforward to write a scenario in Gherkin language. It's as simple as that. Once you have set up Cucumber as part of the lab setup, if that is in place. Right. So we move ahead in the interest of time. Let's look at real world scenarios. This is a pizza delivery application. And let's look at one of the scenario that has been written for it. It says scenario name is order test. Given time is 11. There is a website to browse. Search for margarita, press search. Then you get the search result. It should be medium-sized pizza, add to basket, count of items, checkout, delivery instructions, payment options, details, contact details, success message. There should not be error message. Then thank you and timings and the total amount. Wow, what a wonderful scenario. What is the rule that they are trying to explain in this scenario? Any guesses? We saw the example mapping process, right? You start with a story, put down the behavioral aspect in terms of rules, then you look at examples, then you try to think how this user story will develop under multiple behavioral constraints and with some real data sets. Now, this one scenario, what rule do you think is trying to address? Any you can put down in the chat. If how do I access chat? Yeah, time. Okay. Oh, really? If it was time, then do you think that it's iterating through various aspects of time calculation? Does this scenario address that?
No.
Right. Then let's highlight few of the things which are present here. Scenario name itself indicates order test. So is it a test or is it a spec? All right. There's some hard coding. Then it's talking about click sequence and click stream as to what all is happening on the application. And it's scenarios of these type written with full testing perspective are only readable to testers. And that's the primary reason nobody takes a look at it except testing team. And that too, for them, it is for debugging purpose. They go through their step definitions and they look at why scenario has failed. Nobody bothers to look at any feature definition files. Feature definition is no more a feature definition if it is done from a testing perspective. The sheer purpose of BDD is to set up the behavioral aspect of the stories which are being developed. It begins with a very nicely articulated formal process of finding the behavioral boundaries. And then every scenario is written with a perspective that you go on explaining one rule at a time and slowly flourish that functionality. Right? So these kind of scenarios can only create chaos. There's no clear purpose, clickstream sequence. If it was about shopping cart, then we should have churned the shopping cart with various possibilities. What if it is empty? What if it has got certain values? If the discount coupons were applicable? So this churning of functionality that should happen when you write scenarios. So let's take a look at real world example with a different perspective. So this pizza delivery website, if it is built or when it is built, it is going to be divided into smaller microservices or smaller components, right? There's going to be product catalog, search and filter, shopping cart, checkout, and so on. Every functionality is built one by one. It may be a separate microservice team, or it can be separate mashup or a component which is handed over to same team or multiple teams, maybe in a sequence parallelly and so on. So it's essential when you formulate it, you give focus to each feature to the greater level of detail. And then you need some scenarios that cut across the application, giving you feature dependencies. There cannot be too many feature dependency scenarios because then you are not doing justice to individual functionalities. And that's the very reason you have to use the keywords with proper respect. All these tools, they come up with good deal of keywords which can be used so that you can organize your scenarios well. A feature clubs correlated scenarios together, and the background keyword tries to blur the unrelated, not so required information about the feature in context or about the scenario in context. So for example, let's say search and filter functionality. Now, when you're doing search and filter, you should not be bothered about how authentication will take place. So the journey from login to application to coming to the product page or the pizza page is all encapsulated in the background and written once and forgotten. All you want to focus now is the play around search and filter capabilities, right? So that's how you need to organize the scenarios. So we've seen how these keywords are used, right? Block keywords in this example. So let's take a look at how illustrative scenarios and journey scenarios are different. Illustrative scenarios are granular. They are to the point regarding one functionality at a time. So let's say pay on collection option on checkout page. If I want to elaborate this functionality, the whole focus is on pay on collection feature, not the click stream or the implementation part, whether it's a radio button or a select box. It talks about what will give me this option on the checkout page. So it is basically when the customer chooses to collect his order and he proceeds to payment instruction, that is the time they will get this pay on collection option. Very straightforward. That's the functionality you are building. And UI anyways will evolve over a period of time. Let's look at journey scenario. A journey scenario is elaborate. It cuts across the application. Let's say contact details are stored in a separate microservice and pay on collection, which are checkout options, are stored as a separate part or a separate module. So you want to put down an example like this. Jessie visits the pizza website. When she adds pizza to basket and enter valid contact details, but these are blocked, and she chooses to check out as guest, she should not be given pay on collection option. So that's the clean way of putting down formulation, clean way of putting down scenarios. So we've seen the block keywords, which are across the scenarios, and then there are keywords which are within the context of the scenario. So let's go over the best practices quickly. Scenarios are not tests. Scenarios are specifications. So these have to be short, easy, and it should be easy to maintain. Scenarios have to be brief. It means that it should be written in business domain language. Use real data. We have already put that down in our examples, right? And every scenario has some intention, a single purpose with which it is written. So you want to focus on that very aspect that churns the scenario. So you just blur rest of the functionality. Focus on the outcome, not how you reach the outcome, and omit unnecessary details. In the previous scenario where you are looking at payment options, I could have said input first name, last name, email address, blah, 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 and then select pay, select that the contact details are restricted. That's not, so I don't want to blur your attention by giving first name, last name, email address. Your focus is these are invalid contact details, so the payment option is restricted, right? So omit what is not needed. And finally, single rule per scenario. That's what needs to be focused. Here are best practices for given, when, then. Given is generally the context you want the story should have as a prerequisite. That's the reason it is generally put down in past tense. Again, just give relevant information, not necessary to verify that ATM machine has money when you go to get or enter your amount to be you want to get from the ATM machine, right? So just give immediate context. When should be the stimulus. Generally, there should be a single when statement. Then is about outcome. So many a times there are too many outcomes for a single rule. These have to be put in separate scenarios, primarily because that's how you will be building the functionality. Imagine you write one scenario with too many then statements. The developer himself or herself is not going to put it in one sprint as part of one card. Obviously, that card will get split into multiple cards and then developed, right? So there has to be a careful use of and but. Too many and statement in given indicates that it has unnecessary context. Too many and statements in when indicates that it is a journey scenario. because it's only in journey scenario you are taking 2 or 3 hops to reach the outcome. And too many and statements in then indicate that you're trying to put too many outcomes together. So those are the best practices for writing scenarios. So let's quickly do a hands-on on correctly framing the examples that we discovered in the previous phase, right? So this time I would like you all to do it in your feature files, and you can copy paste it in the chat window. The first example that we looked at was the user who doesn't have any previous browsing history, order history, can place an order for $35, right? Apply 20% discount. Frame this scenario. You get next 20 seconds for this. All right, chat window is here. Okay. So I'll give the scenario name here. Meanwhile, you can start writing this. First time registration users should be eligible for discount of 20%. How will you frame this scenario? Yeah, so you want to say, given that this policy is already on, how will you frame down the steps? Is launching the application an immediate prerequisite? Think about that. Given user is a first time user is absolutely important. Yes, this one is a good one. Given user registers first time, when user shops for $30, then he should be eligible for 20% discount. Crystal clear. You want to add as a background that the policy is on, which is 20% discount for first time user. That policy is on. Good try, Shalvi. So I'll go over the first one. Given a new customer named John signed up, and the first time policy is configured to apply 20% off over $30. When John places an order for a large pepperoni pizza at $35, then John should receive the 20% first time discount. Now, this one and first time order discount policy is on. Because we are going to write scenarios regarding that, I would rather put it as part of the background. Now there's also a discussion around whether you should be mentioning I do this or John does that. What word you should put for the person who is doing the scenario. So as a best practice, it is generally said you want to put down the persona. Like for example, in certain applications, you have role like demand sponsor, program manager, or role like customer or reviewer. So you want to put down, given I am a reviewer, or given reviewer has put down looks at the card, let's say. So you want to mention, instead of John, reviewer, which actually provides an information about role which will be doing that kind of a scenario. In the absence of that, you can straight away use words like some example names for realistically understanding the scenario. We'll move on to the next one. Next one is registered user with no previous successful order should be eligible for 20% discount, right? So the way to pen down this scenario, Jane has signed up 1 month back and she has only one cancelled order. Even this particular customer will be eligible for 20% order. Now it's up to product owner to decide the functionality, whether they'll allow or not. Let's say Peter says yes for this. So this scenario becomes part of the development block, right? So let's move on to the next one, which is with the outline. Say search can be initiated when you enter three letters in the search criteria. So typically this scenario you want to frame with some baseline data in your given, and then you iterate as an outline to see what is possible. But you want to avoid repetitions in that. Every row has a separate perspective and it can be covered, right? So there we come to end of the second part, which is formulation. Now we'll be moving on to automation. So we know that the application, we've got a paper pencil prototype of the application, and we know the example map, and then we have formulated certain scenarios for our user stories. Now you want to make the spec as a living documentation. How is it generally done? The same specification should be applicable to multiple interfaces, whether you want pizza details as part of your OData API, or the mobile app is also there, which needs to be developed. It doesn't mean that you have to write the formulation again and again, because functionality remains common. In fact, if you look at the system architecture, your service APIs are the ones which will serve both the interfaces, be it mobile or web. And that's the primary reason why we want formulation to be written only once, and then it serves multiple interfaces. And it will evolve as the functionality evolves. Many a times you find that UI interfaces change, UI mashups evolve, but functionality doesn't change. And that's the reason you should not be changing your formulation, and you should not be writing any implementation specific details when you formulate business scenarios. So let's take a deeper look at how you want to put down automation so that it becomes living documentation. And second and most important piece, I want to do in sprint automation. I want to do automation when UI is not ready. That's what we will target now. So on one side, we have this scenario information pyramid. Rules and scenarios, they represent top level business APIs. That's the highest business clarity I get from the scenario name. And then as we get into details of a scenario, we kind of give the customer path which is chosen, right? The workflow that the customer takes. And finally, when it comes to step definition, now for those of you, remember we had put down the scenario in our IDE. When I run this scenario and the functionality is not ready, it will generate an empty step definition. So we'll come to that when we do the hands-on. But just for the sake of understanding this particular diagram, step definition is the lowest level where you will start interacting with the application. But the above 2 points are more business oriented and they are giving behavior of the application. Now let's look at the test automation pyramid, the way it needs to be built. Step definition would generally call business classes. So if you look at keyword driven approach to automation, which has nothing to do with BDD as such, but automation layering in itself generally prescribes that you should have a proper layering mechanism where you have the highest business level functionality encapsulated in your business APIs. You call it DSL or business API or keywords or keyword driven approach or your action classes, right? It encapsulates the entire business behavior. So the name has to designate that functionality. The next comes your page objects, which closely interact with DOM elements. And the last layer is the DOM elements. So when you find that the specifications are floated to dev team, what they generally do, they put down the service architecture. And that's very reason automation team or the testing team have to put down their service architecture, which is nothing but business keywords, right? So let's do it for the scenario that we had built in the previous two passes, which was related to search functionality, right? We kind of discussed the example map for it, and then we came up with this particular scenario, right? This is the same scenario we will start automating so that this functionality will be built. This page doesn't exist today. Okay, we have been given either a VD or a wireframe, or it can be a plain simple paper pencil prototype which is floated to us. And now I would like to go ahead, put down the step definition for the scenario which is floated during the user story discussion. So how do we go about it? So deriving from the previous diagram where you have the information pyramid for scenarios and then the test automation layering, let's start putting down what kind of classes I need to prepare, right? So the first one is pizza search feature file. So this is the file where I will put down the scenario. So what we will do is we'll go here in our IDE. And for those of you who have access, or you can just go to the Git URL and browse through this location, right? If you go to resources, feature, search pizza feature, this scenario is same as the scenario which we saw on the slide deck, right? The previous slide deck we saw that we are trying to build the search functionality, right? This is the same scenario which is present over here, right? So the first pass that we do is we put down the feature file. Feature file gives you the business aspect of what is the functionality which is being built. The next thing to do is to generate the step definition for the same. So you go to the step definition folder. Here is search pizza steps, right? So if you want to, let's say previously, so what is step definition? When we built this small example, right? Given I've ordered, there was no steps for it. A simple way to generate steps would be to simply click on this step and it asks, you want to create a step definition? I say yes. This one was about eating pizzas. And I want to put it in the folder step definition. Click it over here. And it will add step definition, create this step definition file. So this is basically the snake notation. So the given statement is converted into an empty API. That's all what is step definition. So coming back to our search feature example, there's already a step definition which I've kept generated over here. As far as rest of the Selenium commands are concerned, let's don't look at it for a while. Consider this one is an empty step definition, right? This empty step definition will get generated when you create this feature file. Now, the next thing that I want to do when I generate this step definition, I want to just put down business classes as if I am browsing through the application. So if we go back to our pyramid, what I want to do is I want to put down pizza search steps such that it will just have given when then. And I want to just put down some placeholder which will take me, imagine I'm going through the application. That's what I'll try doing here now. So we put down a class which encapsulates the business functionality, pizza catalog, and I will just say navigate to menu page. In the search, I will say search the text, and then wherever I get this information back, I'm going to say assert that information. Nothing stops me from doing this. Anyways, the functionality doesn't exist, but I know what is the sequence of events that a customer will go through as part of the user story specifications. So we go to the business class and we start elaborating this class, right? So business class is pretty simple. All I'm going to say is navigate to menu, search by pizza name, search by pizza size, search by price. And all that it's going to do is put down placeholder methods to go over and interact with these elements. And that entire functionality is now encapsulated in the page level classes. So our next level of indirection here, our business class will be interacting with the page classes where we put down low level interactions, right? So this page class will interact with DOM elements, which are the lowest level. So let me open the pizza properties here, the pizza catalog properties. This file can be set of empty strings. This is where I put down the DOM element because the page doesn't exist today. So I'm just going to put empty elements. I should be able to interact with these elements in my page class. Sorry, where it is, pages, pizza catalog page. Here I'm going to put down all the interaction which is needed, load this property file, and simply click on the menu. That's all I've done. This menu doesn't exist today, but I've put a placeholder for that. Similarly, if you look at search pizza, I've put down get that search text box, clear the context, send the keys, and search for the pizza. A comparator and get pizza name details, assuming that there are certain placeholders. Now, tomorrow, when the actual web page gets implemented, I might have to tweak this class to a certain extent. And other thing that I'll have to do is put down the placeholder properties in the property file, which will be the real property files. But putting down all these things, I can very well do today because I know the functionality. I need not wait for the entire application to be ready. Generally, what happens is testing team is slightly idle towards the start of the sprint. And as the sprint progresses towards the end, automation is remaining behind. The entire focus shifts to somehow certifying the functionality, and it becomes N+1 sprint automation. But with this logic, most of the automation steps regarding the specifications are ready. All that you would keep aside is the final implementation, right? So we'll go ahead now and look into how most of this stuff can be generated when we start using GenAI. We'll come to that. But before we step onto GenAI, let me quickly take a look at how service level BDD also can be practiced. In case of service level BDD, look at this scenario. Here we are trying to validate a web service. When you give order details, order number, you should be able to validate the order details. A plain simple way of doing that is implementing a web service client and then provide a class which will validate the same. If you have the structure ready, even this can be kept ready. In fact, the service level service skeletons are established ahead of time before the actual implementation begins. So nothing stops you from actually implementing this along with the dev team. BDD at unit level, and I call it BDD and not TDD, primarily because it gives you class level specs. And if you write it in a manner which explains the specification of the class, it turns out to be the behavior of the class and not, I'm talking about method specific behaviors, but the wordings instead of test underscore something, if it is converted into specification way of what exactly the class does, it becomes a living documentation. It can be practiced for UI units. It can be practiced for backend units as well. All right, now we come to the last part, which is about GenAI. A lot has been talked about it, and I'm sure till the time I'm taking this presentation, most of you would have practiced putting various prompts and most of the stuff like format the inputs, format the outputs is very well known to everyone. So I would like to add a little bit on top of what exactly has been tried and tested with the context of BDD. So what we will do is we'll consider these two user stories. In order to fix an incorrect delivery address as a client, I want to change the delivery address after the order is placed, right? So we'll pick up the user stories and we'll practice BDD. Now we know the basics. If you know the basics, you can validate what the GenAI will throw back at you, and accordingly, you see some error message. I don't know why I got this error message. And accordingly, we should be able to validate whether it's in line with the best practices that we have just learned, right? So let's get started. I want you all to open the Claude or ChatGPT client that you have, and start using these prompts to see whether you get the desired output. So for the first user story, what we'll do here is we have put down this format. It's Tariq King and Rahul Verma have emphasized use of Markdown language. So what I've done is all the best practices that we have studied till now, we apply it to the Markdown format, right? So generate rules and concrete examples to elaborate the user story, right? And we give the user story details. In the input, we explain the user story details. In the steps, we tell the prompt engine as to what is the step-by-step action it needs to take. It needs to, what we did when we did the example mapping, right? On the Excel lead draw, you elaborated the rules, right? And then for every rule, you got the examples. And in every example, you had put some data samples. And then what we actually did was tried to put down exceptional flows, ideal flows, alternative flows. And that's exactly what we want to tell the GPT engine, that these are the steps that you need to take. And then finally, the response format, right? It's a tree structure. So if you go to the documentation folder, you will find this prompt 1. Okay. Copy paste this prompt and try putting it in, let's say, I'll pick this up and we'll put it in, we'll try putting it in the GPT. Let's see. Where's the window? All right, here we have Claude. Okay. So I'm going to put it here. My, is it visible? The screen is visible. The Claude screen is visible.
Yes.
Okay. I'll put this and let's try to see what it gives. All right, it's generated a mind map for me. And if you read through this, there are rules that it has found. Customer must confirm additional fees. Address change only allowed within 10 minutes of the order is placed. So it has kind of guessed the boundaries of behavior that story should have. Anyone else have got a different response? Right. But you look at the way scenarios are emerging, right? It is giving you the behavioral aspect of it. Now let's tweak this prompt to one more with a slight modification. So for the first time when I had put this in ChatGPT, I got the tree structure. You saw in Claude, I got the mind map now. And for the first time when I had put, it actually gave me user can only change the delivery address before the order is dispatched in the same city. See, it guessed that. So when we start brainstorming stories, right, rather than starting it from scratch, you can validate against a number of things that behavioral context. It gives you a head start for discussion, right? All right, we'll go to the next one. So what we'll do now is, we will tweak the prompt to indicate 1 second. So I have explained the rule over here. Rule is generic expression of how the system should behave, and an example has context, action, and outcome, right? And when this particular mission statement is given, it will take into consideration these best practices. The next one would be give me top 5 rules and top 3 examples for each. So try putting it in your GenAI window. See what it gives you as an output. How much time do I have? I have 3-4 more prompts there. I'm within the time, right?
Officially, you end at in another 4 minutes. But since there is a break time, we can give you another 5 minutes more. So 10 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Right. So, okay, let me take to the next one. So have you tried that scenario? Anyone? Okay. We'll move on to the next one. Now here, there's no markdown format, but then all the aspects of markdown format has been taken care of. What we have done is, in the previous prompt, we generated that image, right? We'll give it as an image input to the next prompt. So I want the GenAI engine to generate a state-of-art Gherkin scenario with relevant data assumptions with image input, because the behavioral boundaries are already put in the image. So I'm giving the specification as an input, right? And use relevant data samples to denote intended behavior, and mention the data, and use data tables wherever necessary. Try giving this prompt, and you will find this prompt as prompt 3. You'll find it in the next file, prompt 3, in the same Git repo. Copy that and try giving this prompt now. And there's an image which was generated, so you can give this image as an input to the prompt. So let's go to the next one. Like if I give this prompt and I attach that image, say it gives me where is the image? I'll give this image as the input image. And then we put this prompt. Let's see what kind of scenarios it generates. See that it's generating the outline table correctly. And that too with proper status and pretty comprehensive, right? Correct. So now let's go to the next one. Right. So now here's a markdown for the given user story where we select the toppings for pan pizza. But now I'm not giving it any example mapping. We are directly jumping to formulation, but then I'm giving persona in the markdown, right? Because then it will do example mapping for me by finding the behavioral aspect of the story first, and then it will write the scenarios. And that's what I've explained in the steps. Elaborate the behavior rules for the story first, then go to each rule to find example and data samples, cover the exceptional flows, and then write the gherkin, right? If you give a prompt which is directly give me scenarios with given when then syntax, it will not do justice to the behavioral aspect of the story. And that's the reason this markdown format comes in very handy, right? Try giving this scenario. It's in prompt 4 file. So if you check this out and see what kind of scenarios it generates for the pan pizza toppings. We'll try putting this in GPT this time. Let's see that. Okay. So see, it's outlining the rules first, and then it started putting down the gherkins. Viewing available toppings, multiple toppings, restricting selection to maximum toppings. Pretty exhaustive, right? Dynamic price update, no topping selected, handling unavailable toppings, error messages, correct? All right, so let's come to the next one. So there are custom GPTs which are also available. If you go to GPTs and look into explore GPT.
Yeah, actually, we can give you 3 more minutes, okay?
Yeah, I'm almost done. And if I type BDD here, you will find that there are plugins which can be used. I have used some of these plugins. They come in handy, but then there's a word of caution. Depending upon you have to validate what output, because it depends upon the best practices which are possible. And this is the last part when I'm trying to generate automation out of the specification or the wireframe or a paper pencil prototype that I might have. So what in the prompt, what we give is give the names of the classes that you want to generate and the image of the paper pencil prototype that has been floated. BDD is practiced when the application is not ready, right? You don't have the actual recognition strings which are ready, yet you want to put down the automation code. So this is very easily possible here. So try putting this prompt. It's present in prompt 5. It cleanly generates these files. Let's quickly do that. So we close on the last one. I'll copy this and let's put it in ChatGPT. So let's go here, take the first one, and we'll put this prompt and see that it generates all the files. Now, in my case, it will change because I've been trying these prompts, but anyone has tried? Has it cleanly generated on your side? You can put the message in the chat window if anyone is trying these prompts. And there's a clean implementation with a lot of details, like it's assuming that there should be a basket class and it's giving all the details. All right. And the last one, wherein I'm not identifying the classes, I'm just giving the gherkin scenario as the input. And once you give this input, it still does a good job because the persona is expert senior estate Java Selenium developer who understands page object pattern and Java coding conventions, instantiates the classes in Cucumber step definition. With that level of detail and the scenario name, you should be able to get here, right? Try that prompt. I'm sure it will generate a proper step definition. So that GPTs are again possible. Selenium Sage is one of one good plugin that is possible for Selenium class, and there's a lot that is already there as far as automation part is concerned. So that brings us to the end of this small workshop. We started from business alignment, moved on to basics of BDD, collaboration technique with the help of example mapping, and then importance of structured conversation, finding the behavioral boundaries of the stories, and then using GenAI for really bringing in efficiency in our work. There's great literature around on BDD, how well it needs to be practiced with the focus on behavior prior to development begins. So I thank you all for listening to me patiently. I hope there are some things that that you can go ahead and apply in your routine work, and it helps you ensure that the business aspect and the business agility is correctly brought into the user stories that you attempt. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashwini. Thanks a lot. Does anyone have any question? We can quickly take it for 1 more minute. Does anyone have? I guess they don't have any question.
Yeah,
But-
we was following it up when she was doing. So I think, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So thank you, Ashwini. Thanks for a great session. It was very informative. And the real world scenario of having the pizza is the best, I guess. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Aditya, for giving this opportunity. It was great sharing all the experiences with a larger forum. Thank you so much.
Really, Ashwini, it was very well taken. You explained it in a very, very lucid manner, taking the examples, and it was extremely well done. Thank you so much for your time and effort. Humongous efforts, really. Thank you.
Thanks, Aditya. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.